How's it going, everybody? Brady Feaster here, talking franchising with a good buddy of mine in the industry. If you've worked with him, he's a good buddy of yours as well. Storm Miller from the Rep'em Group. Reason I have Storm on here today is I've got folks who come to me pretty frequently and say, hey, franchising, I'm thinking retail, I'm thinking food. Some people have differing opinions on this. And we transparently, over the decade and a half that we've been in operation, we can count on one hand the amount of clients that we placed in food businesses. Storm's brand Milkshake Factory is one of them, and it is growing pretty rapidly. If you haven't seen it in your town, in your metro center yet, you will. It's called the Milkshake Factory. So I wanted to have him on here today to talk a little bit about what makes Milkshake Factory so different from other food service brands, what he's seen with this brand that's leading to such rapid growth, and give you an opportunity to whet your appetite a little bit and hopefully get in on the action here. So, Storm, what's going on, man? How are you?
Brady, as always, a pleasure to reconnect, and I appreciate you having me on the podcast today to talk a little bit about milkshakes and chocolate and the opportunity with Milkshake Factory. It's a fun brand.
Yeah, no, it is a fun brand, and it's always fun for me on the consultant side to work with folks in franchise development like you who've got a genuine passion and energy for the brand. So, as we were talking beforehand, and as I've gotten to know you and the brand over the past couple of years, what you really do a good job of explaining is how a lot of the headaches that come with a traditional food brand don't apply to Milkshake Factory. So if you could kind of just start off here of what makes Milkshake Factory different, what's its story? I know it's been around for a long time, based just up the road from you in Pittsburgh and is expanding across the country, but tell us a little bit about the origin story of Milkshake Factory and why it breaks some of the rules of the food service industry and franchising.
Yeah. So first things first, I'll preface it by saying I am not your stereotypical food service guy. And you and Todd have known me for a long time. I've been in franchising for over a decade now. Never saw myself working in the food service sector. But here we are, right? 2 years in to our run, kind of overseeing development. We're having an absolute blast. Even when I was, kind of representing the funding side of the industry, we did a little bit of work with some of the QSRs out there in the space, but not a ton. A lot of service, a lot more retail. I did a ton in wellness and fitness and things like that. And that's the world that I had come from. But even I figured out what these guys were doing, what made them a little bit different. And I think having the right go-to-market message has really helped the brand grow fairly consistently over the last year and a half. So you look at the QSR space, right? And you talk to people all day long that are interested in investing in different opportunities. Most people will probably tell you, hey, listen, I'll look at anything. I just won't look at food. And there's a handful of reasons people don't want to look at food. The first is the item 7 of a traditional full service restaurant. Big investments, right? Big equipment packages. And sometimes you have to lease the equipment. Interest rates on those leases can be a little bit higher. You look at complicated menus with complex SKUs. If it's a business where you throw food away because you can't sell it quickly enough, it is really difficult to create profitability in a model like that, right? And then you tack on the labor, right? You need a lot of people in a physical location in order to make the operation run smoothly. Then you've got turnover amongst the employees. I totally understand all of that. As somebody who's a potential franchise investor myself, I would not want to get into a full service restaurant. But all of the problems that you tend to see with these larger investment QSRs and full service restaurants, none of that really applies in our business, right? And I went out to meet the team at Milkshake Factory back in, I believe it was January of 2023. We weren't even franchised yet. We didn't franchise until April of that year. And I was with the team in Pittsburgh for maybe 15 minutes before I realized that this thing was going to be a little bit different than some of the other food brands that have, kind of come and gone from the FranNet inventory, and same with the other, consulting networks. It's really more of a retail operation. We do it in a small box, and we just happen to sell a food product. And when you look at the product that we sell, the shelf life on it is super strong because of how we ship it to the store. And then the volume that we tend to see in our locations, we don't really have any waste. And then when it comes to, kind of our employee structure, on a given day, you might have anywhere from 2 to 5 hourly employees working in the store, and then maybe a general manager or an assistant general manager that floats. We keep everything super simple, right? 14 milkshakes on the menu every single day, all built on the same vanilla base. We can get into that down the line. But for that reason, our product, we're able to create it very quickly. There's not a lot of variation in it. And over the years, we have taught 16, 17, 18-year-old kids how to build a world-class milkshake. It's something we're pretty proud of. To that point, Brady, you look at brands, right? And I know Frannet does a fantastic job of actually vetting franchisors before they come into your inventory. I know, Janet, I know your guys over there. I know you've denied brands. They're not ready to come into your inventory, right? Brands have to check off some pretty specific boxes. And I think the paradox with our brand is that even though we are young as a franchisor, we've only been franchised for a little less than 2 years now. We're like a 110-year-old startup, right? There is a super rich history behind the brand. The Edwards family has been in the desserts space and the sweet treat space for 4 generations and over 110 years now. Even Milkshake Factory as a standalone brand has been around for about 22 years. We've learned some things along the way. We've created proof of concept. We have our systems down pat. And then you couple that with what I feel is the strongest leadership team in all of franchising. I think it made for a pretty compelling story when we opened it up as a franchise opportunity.
Well, I love the way that you position that as a story, right? Because that's so much of what you're buying into when you think of a franchise. Is you are joining the oftentimes decades long, in the case of Milkshake Factory, over a century-long history of a business model, and you are joining that story. So when you talk about the story of Milkshake Factory and the family behind it, tell us a little bit about how Milkshake Factory started and how it's got to the point where now it's a multi-state, growth franchise brand all across the United States.
Yeah, so you've got to go all the way back to 1914 to really understand the genesis of what eventually became the Milkshake Factory. And that was the year that Dana's ancestors immigrated to the United States from Greece. They came through Ellis Island, settled in Pittsburgh. They didn't know the language here. Really, the only thing that they brought with them from Greece were the shirts on their backs and then the family chocolate recipes. That was what they knew how to do. They knew how to make chocolate. So they started out in Pittsburgh selling chocolate off of street corners and sold a ton of chocolate. Everybody in the city came to love their product. Well, they ended up saving up enough money and enough money to open their own little chocolate retail shop. Over the next couple of decades, that commercial retail chocolate shop kind of evolved into a commercial chocolate factory. And the family employed over 200 individuals in that business, grew the family chocolate business fairly significantly over the next few decades. And then again, kind of got back into the retail space, opened up a few additional chocolate shops throughout the city. Well, back in 2003, Dana decided that she wanted to focus on a little bit of a different product in one of the stores. And what we realized was that chocolate sales were fairly seasonal. Chocolate sold really well through the holidays. But there were certain stores in the city where you didn't see a lot of business after Valentine's Day. And that ran all the way up until about Halloween, right? That's when business would pick back up for them. So they started experimenting with selling milkshakes in the store. And it went pretty well. And what we realized was it didn't really matter what time of year it was. And this is even for a 4-season city like Pittsburgh. People bought milkshakes year round. And then obviously, as it got a little bit into like the colder months of the year, and we're in this right now, do milkshake sales start to slow a little bit? Sure. But what ends up picking up is chocolate, right? And out of that came the Milkshake Factory. So rebranded the old Edwards family chocolate shop into the first Milkshake Factory back in 2003. Really figured out an awful lot about that business over the next decade plus. We didn't actually open the second store in Pittsburgh until 2016, 2 more in 2018, 3 in 2019, 2 more in the first 2 months of 2020. COVID hits. We had to slow down a little bit. Then we opened another corporate location in 22 and the 11th in 2023 before franchising and going to market.
Yep. No, it's great. And what Milkshake Factory has become is really a household name in the Pittsburgh market. Mm-hmm. And, for me on the consulting side, people come to me not really knowing what they're looking for, but maybe having a general idea of, hey, I've got someone who's invested in a Papa John's or a Jersey Mike's, or say, hey, I want a Chick-fil-A, right?
Sure.
Whenever I have anyone who comes to the table saying anything around the food space, Milkshake Factory is the first thing that I think of, because oftentimes what's underneath those specific brands is a desire to create a community staple, to be known as a local gathering spot in your community, and there's brand recognition and investment that comes with that. What have you found gets people excited about the Milkshake Factory opportunity, and what has their brand presence looked like in their home market of Pittsburgh, and how is that starting to develop? I know that you guys are poised to really just start to pop up all over the place here early in 2025 and beyond, but what does the local presence of the brand look like at this point?
So I actually want to touch on something that you just mentioned, right? Because I know FranNet takes people through a process to kind of determine a candidate's personality type. And, based on their personality type, what they excel at, what they look for, how they actually manage people, they kind of match them with brands that are looking for that profile of candidate. We love belongers. We love societals. We want people who already have that connection to their community and want to build a business that will strengthen that connection. It's exactly what we did out in Pittsburgh, right? So we have 11 corporate locations out there in the market. We're a household name in Pittsburgh, right? Of the 11, 9 of them are more franchise conforming. And if anybody that is hearing this wants to explore which ones are, which ones aren't, we can get into that down the line. One's a 300 square foot stall we have inside of a hockey arena. And then the other one is the original, chocolate shop that operated as such for decades before, we rebranded. Those 2 locations are a little bit of a different story. The rest are more the franchise model, but we've really kind of involved ourselves and immersed ourselves in our community out there in Pittsburgh. If you go anywhere in the city, you can ask anybody out there, where's the best place to get a dessert? And they're going to tell you Milkshake Factory. And the reason that Dana decided to go the franchise route, as opposed to just trying to open locations on the corporate side in cities all across the country, is she's very connected with Pittsburgh. She doesn't necessarily have that connection in other markets. That's why the franchise model made so much sense here, right? So we started opening locations all across the country. And for everybody that is listening, we didn't actually execute on our very first franchise agreement until August 1st of 2023. Right. So in terms of actually awarding territory, we haven't been at this for very long, but we've got stores that are open outside of Pittsburgh in Salt Lake City. We have another one in Ann Arbor, Michigan. That one's actually owned and run by the brand president. We have one in Durham, North Carolina. The guys that opened the store in Durham, they opened it right across the street from the Durham Bulls baseball stadium. Right. So they kind of tied into that really strong connection that already existed in the market. Same thing with our group down in Dallas, Texas. They're in Grapevine. They just opened their location. They're getting ready to open another one down in Fort Worth because they're TCU alum. So they wanted to open one near the school that they graduated from because they have that connection with the community. And this month alone is a very big month for us. We had a lot of franchisees who completed construction last year. They had their certificates of occupancy, and we could have opened stores in late October, November, and December. But what we learned in our time opening our own corporate locations is that the hiring cycle is a little bit different at the end of the year. Yep. You've got a lot of people that are looking to leave jobs and are more apt to start new positions in the new year. So starting this month and kind of bleeding into February, we have like another dozen stores or so that will open. And we anticipate, based on where all of our franchisees are in site selection and lease negotiation, and this is something we're very involved in. So if you've never gone through a commercial lease negotiation, if you've never had to find a site, don't worry about it. Repum Group specializes in that. But based on where everybody else is, we anticipate we should open about 2 to 3 stores every month this year. So this is going to really start to kind of unfold nationally, and we're really excited for that.
Yeah, that's great. I know I've got one opening just 10 minutes up the road from me, and I can't wait to try the strawberry chocolate chip milkshake, which I know is the go-to.
Yep.
Speaking of that, tell me a little bit about the product, because when it comes to food, the product ultimately is how you create that word of mouth. It's how you create the buzz. All the business model elements of Milkshake Factory are really unique. That really buck a lot of the trends that are in the food service space. But I know that the leadership team has put a really big premium on the vanilla ice cream base, the specific flavors, to really create that buzz around the product itself. So tell us a little bit about that. And then for you personally, I mean, when you're at a Discovery Day or you're out up in Pittsburgh working with the team and you want to sip on a milkshake, what are you ordering?
Yeah. So as I kind of touched on briefly earlier, any milkshake factory that you walk into, there are 14 milkshakes on the wall every single day. And all of them are built on the same vanilla base, right? And we use 2 Stolting manufactured ice cream machines in each of our stores to create the vanilla base for each individual shake. So this is a super fresh milkshake. And I will tell you right now, and I could say this and still sleep at night because I've been working with the brand for 2 years. For everybody that's listening, this will be the best milkshake you've ever had in your life. I was sold when I just taste tested the vanilla shake and I realized the product was going to be a little bit different. But what we're doing when we build this thing is we're using our own proprietary house-made ice cream. And that is an Edwards family recipe that's been passed down. We mix that with a dairy product that contains a pretty strong butter fat content. And for the foodies out there, you've probably gotten into food science a little bit. But in order to qualify as ice cream, the butter fat content in the dairy has to be north of 10%. And ours is. And it's by a pretty comfortable margin, right? So this is a pretty rich product. What we do is we run the mixture through an ice cream machine and it sucks the air out of that mixture. And that leaves us with the vanilla base that goes into all 14 of our milkshakes. And once we have the vanilla base in the mixing cup, all we need to do are scoop in our inclusions. And then we even use our own proprietary syrups to flavor these milkshakes, right? So we pump that syrup in and hand spin the product in store. That entire process tends to take a more inexperienced employee, maybe 60 to 70 seconds to make a shake. So we're set up to move these out of the store at scale, but it's a proprietary product. The formulation of that ice cream, the Edwards family owns that. And when we have the product shipped to the store, we have that product built to our spec at our respective suppliers' manufacturing facilities. So this is not something you can walk into your local grocery store and just buy off the shelf. They don't have the formulation. And that's what the Edwards family is really known for. These guys don't just make some of the best sweet treats in the United States. They do. They're innovators, right? These are the guys that created Snappers and the chocolate-covered coconut almonds that you find in Costco, right? They're innovative, but they've created their own proprietary product over the years. And what we deliver to our customers in Pittsburgh, because we're just leveraging our own proprietary product, it's the same product that we're going to be delivering all across the United States. So we're excited about that. I'll tell you right now, I've taste tested every milkshake on the menu, and then all the LTOs, right? So every 7 to 8 weeks, we also roll out limited time offering milkshakes. My favorite is the chocolate dip strawberry. That thing is out of this world. The flagship product is called the Chocolatier. Sells pretty well, and that's kind of an ode to the family history being in chocolate. We're actually thinking about moving some milkshakes around and adding some different ones to the signature line. I will also tell you that the LTO that we run in the fall, the pumpkin pie milkshake,
ooh,
pretty good.
Yeah, you got my attention.
Yeah, so we actually use a pumpkin puree in that milkshake, which gives you that authentic pumpkin taste. But what sends that thing over the top and kind of separates it from every other product I've ever had is we crush up a graham cracker crust and we use that as an inclusion in the shake. So you get the pumpkin, you get obviously the milkshake, and then you get the graham cracker crust in there too. Man, that thing was out of this world.
Yep.
But it is really difficult to walk into a store, order any of those milkshakes and find that you're not a fan of them.
Yep.
And then on top of that, right, I think another important thing to bring up is, most of these milkshakes that we're talking about right now, these are traditional dairy milkshakes. We've always got 4 dairy-free vegan shakes on the menu every year. So for the lactose intolerant community and those with some dietary restrictions, if you are a vegan, we've got a product for you. And I'll tell you right now, I dabble in those products myself. It's kind of like your healthier alternative product as well. It is very difficult to tell the difference between the dairy-free shake and a traditional dairy shake. They're both very good.
Yeah, that's a big deal. I mean, especially, in the day and age that we live in, I mean, you got to be able to reach different types of clientele when it comes to food.
Yeah.
I'd like to just shift gears here kind of subtly, but when we think about 2025 going into the new year, obviously we're coming off an election year. There's a new economy that we're walking into. Frankly, a lot of optimism in the franchising space. Storm, you've been in the funding side of things. You've been on the franchise development side of the aisle as well. Tell me a little bit about what your journey within franchising has been, and really, as you take a look at what 2025 and beyond looks like, what has you optimistic about the franchise industry?
Yeah, I think coming into 2025, we're going to see market conditions continue to improve. I was in funding from 2015 all the way up into early 2020. And I will say that the credit market at that time was pretty wide open. As a matter of fact, the company I worked at, there was a specific year. This was my last year as an actual producer within the company. We tripled our SBA department. It was kind of wild. And that credit market was so wide open, you could drive a truck through it. And then you saw COVID happen, right? And kind of an act of God, if you will. It changed the way that we lived, and it changed the economy, and it changed the market. You saw the credit market tighten up a little bit. Then you saw hyperinflation, right? But on top of the hyperinflation, the market continued to perform. So people who had money invested in the market, generally speaking, they've made some money. If you owned a home prior to COVID, you may have doubled your equity, right? So we have access to capital now because of the market conditions of the last 4 years that we didn't necessarily have before. But as costs continue to fall, right? And I think less government spending will continue to help prices fall back to maybe where they were before. You're also going to see the Fed continue to drop rates if inflation continues to fall, right? The Fed will follow suit. And as money becomes cheaper and cheaper, we could be walking into a pretty aggressively expanding economy over the next 4 years. It's something I am super excited about. And even though I no longer work in funding, maintain a ton of relationships on that side of the business. You do too. And I spent so much time talking about it for so many years. I just had an absolute blast with it. It's something I still pay attention to because I believe in it. I believe in tracking market conditions. I want to have an understanding of, hey, what are the next couple of years going to look like? But I know for me personally, right? And frankly, I think on behalf of everybody at the Repum Group, we are super excited about 2025, 2026 and on. Could be a really, really good time to invest in franchising.
Absolutely. Well, and you talk about the idea of investing in franchising and what specific franchise investors are looking for. You've been around it, as you said, for a long time. From your experience, Storm, and if there's someone here who's a prospective franchise investor and really trying to understand, is this something that's going to be a good idea for me and for my family? What are some of the common traits that you see between successful franchisees or franchisees that maybe didn't reach their goals?
Yeah. So first off, let's just talk about investing in a franchise in the first place, right? There's investing in businesses and there's investing in franchises. I think an investment into franchising in and of itself is a way to hedge against risk. Mm-hmm. And the analogy that I like to use is if you're investing in the market, you could buy stock in a company, right? And that company could do well. It could do pretty poorly. The way to hedge against that is to invest in a fund, right? And that way you're hedging some risk. I look at franchising as the same thing, right? There should be a proven business model. There should be something that business does a little bit differently, maybe something proprietary, and it can't be an individual. It's got to be a product. It's got to be some type of service. It's got to be some type of technology. They have to be doing something that nobody else is doing, right? There's got to be a market for what they do. And you want to make sure that you understand that market. You also want to make sure that you have trust in the leadership team, right? Have they done this before? The greatest thing about investing in a franchising is the opportunity to validate with other franchisees, right? You'll talk to people who represent the brand on the development side all day long. Make sure you also talk to the leadership team and make sure you talk to people who are already in the system, right? Validate the things that you're being told. It's an awesome model for investing into a business and ensuring that you're making the right decision. But I think those are things you want to take a look at. When it comes to people who are often successful in franchise systems, I think they've got one or more or a combination of the following skills. They know how to sell, right? And they're passionate about what it is that they're selling. It doesn't matter what business you buy. I hate to break it to everybody on the call. You're selling something to somebody, right? So if you've got soft selling or consultative selling skills, that's going to bode well if you're going to be an owner in a business, right? If you've got management experience, if you've hired, if you fired, more than likely, if you're buying a franchise, it's not going to be a one-man band, right? So you're going to want experience hiring people, firing people, bringing people in, training them, developing them, and then kind of growing them through your own little corporate ladder. If you've got experience like that, that's going to bode well. But I think the biggest thing, right, is the ability to execute on the mundane. And Brady, this sounds so boring, but when you buy into a franchise system, you're going to be given more than likely a 250 to 300 page operating manual, right? And that operating manual represents all of the collective successes and failures of that franchise system to date. It is invaluable. Can you go out and execute on the things that you need to execute on and the things that have been executed on a corporate level to drive success with your own business? That's the question. And a lot of people, I think sometimes where they get caught up is they say, okay, I've gone out and done that. What now? Well, the answer is, kind of one you may not want to hear. Go do it again, right? And when you wake up tomorrow, go do it again. Go do it again, go do it again, go do it again. It's like working out, right? The way that you kind of build yourself into your best version of yourself, the way you get more fit is to go do something pretty hard, wake up the next day and go do it again. Wake up the next day and go do it again. It's the same thing in business, right? But I think if you're doing some of these things, if you've got some of these experiences, if you're connected to your community, if you have another operator in mind that you can bring into this business who's equally as passionate as you are about the business, these are some of the things that tend to drive not just that initial success, but long-term sustained success.
Well, I can tell that we're kind of cut from the same cloth because you're talking like I do. I coach high school football on the side. You're talking like I do to the kids that I coach. We talk all the time about this concept of stacking days.
Yep.
Where consistency beats a small spurt of intensity all day, every day, right? And the benefits that you're reaping from or the success that you're experiencing today, that doesn't correlate to the effort you're putting in right then and there. You're just reaping the benefit of what you've been doing for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, a year plus. And it's the same concept. And that's why we've seen all sorts of success in franchising from people who know how to execute, who know how to do the boring, the mundane, the kind of just going through the motions things, but doing that at a really high level. It's athletes, it's veterans. Those are people who know how to work within a system, who know how to execute and are okay not having that instant gratification of, I'm going to go really, really hard for right now, and I'm expecting those results to happen right away. It doesn't work that way.
Nope.
And then the other piece that I hear all the time, if I'm going to get on my soapbox while I'm already up here, man, it's this idea that looking for a passive investment. And I'd love to hear from you on the Milkshake Factory side, what the investment strategy looks like and what the role of the owner and the time commitment of that. But passive investments within franchising, I hear all the time, hey, can I find something that I can spend 5 hours a month in that is going to allow me to net, 6 figures within 6 months, and it can kind of just become mailbox money. I'm like, look, if you're looking to do something like that quickly, you let me know what it is because I don't have it in my inventory.
Yeah.
If you want a passive investment to just watch your money grow, I got a financial planner that I can put you in touch with, and you can go invest in funds like Storm just mentioned. But if you're looking to grow more aggressively and have an active role in growing that investment, that's when I think franchise is a good model for you. So in that light, what does the day in and day out of an owner within Milkshake Factory look like? Are they in the store spinning milkshakes 60 hours a week, or are they managing this thing from somewhere else. What does the day in and day out of an owner look like?
Most people are managing managers, right? And I don't think people are investing into this brand so that they're in the store 50, 60, 70 hours a week spinning milkshakes, right? I'll tell you right now, the general managers in our stores are not in there 50, 60, 70 hours a week. We try to limit our GMs to 40, 45 hours to prevent burnout. It's another issue you see in food service, not necessarily something we see in our model because we know how to offer employees a work-life balance. But to that point, right, we tend to be busier in the evenings than we are in the afternoons. So if you are working a day job or if you are running another business during the day, our busiest hours in the stores tend to be from 7 to 10 o'clock in the evening. You can still have direct supervision over the operation of your store during the day part where you're going to be generating the most revenue throughout the year. And I think that's kind of unique to our model. It's because we're in the desserts category. And I think that's something that people fall in love with. But for the most part, most people are looking to hire general managers. They're bringing in somebody who has experience in either food service or in retail, somebody that's got customer service skills, somebody that's hired, somebody that's trained. And yeah, do our franchisees also do that in the stores? Absolutely. We've got a couple of franchisees that are opening stores rather rapidly, and they're taking on the GM role. They're hiring everybody in the stores and they're managing them. And all the while, what they're doing is they're looking for somebody who's going to rise to the top. Mm-hmm. And that they can kind of take under their wing and train to basically backfill them and replace them as they go focus on opening the next store. I think that is a great model if you're looking to go the multi-unit route and kind of create market dominance in a rather aggressive fashion. We have people in the system who are doing that now. They have experience doing it. Candidates will have a chance to talk to some of those guys. But yeah, I mean, you got to have some direct involvement in the business. If you're looking for something passive, maybe real estate. But again, the returns are hard to come by. You could invest money in the market, right? But it's not going to generate a direct income stream for you. You might, return a dividend, right? But I had a candidate who came to Discovery Day, and this is a gentleman who ended up not moving forward. And he said, "Listen, I'm looking at the rate of return on this thing, and I'm kind of measuring it against what I get in the market." And I go, "Okay, on average, since World War II, the S&P returns what, 7%? 8%, 9%? He said, "Yeah, sure." She's like, "So I'm measuring it against that." And I go, "How much active income is the S&P paying you?" And he goes, "What?" And I go, "You're comparing a dividend with active income from a cash flowing business. It's apples and oranges, right? Mm-hmm. This thing takes work. I'm not going to lie to you, but choose your hard, right? Do you want to continue to not make money in this vertical? That's fine. But there's a path to do that." I hate when I hear that somebody is positioning a brand as a passive opportunity. I just don't see it. I didn't see a ton of it on the funding side. By the way, if it's truly passive, it won't be SBA eligible. That's a whole other story. We've worked with some brands like that, but I just don't really see it. And for anybody that's out there and is considering investing in a franchise, I know I wouldn't be comfortable with this, but if you're investing $250, $300, $400, $5,000 or $500,000 of your money in a business, wouldn't you want a little bit of control over how that business performs? Mm-hmm. I'm not a guy who can afford to kind of throw that money away. I'd want to have some direct involvement in the business.
Absolutely. Well, and that's what you're paying for. You're paying for the opportunity to have control of that. And if you're going to just hand that over to someone else who's going to run your business, you better have a lot of confidence in that person. Right. I think I 100% agree with you of that's what franchising is. It's taking control ultimately of what your returns there look like as an active investment versus something passive like you talked about. So, Stormy, any parting shots for you on the Milkshake Factory side, on franchising as a whole, on market conditions? I mean, what are we missing here that I haven't thought to ask?
No, I think you've touched on a lot of things that people are going to want to know about. I think the thing that I would add is, for anybody that is listening or that sees this and is evaluating whether or not franchising is the right fit, Brady, you're a great source. You're a fantastic resource. I have truly enjoyed working with FranNet consultants over the last 10, 11 years. I don't know if you know this about me, but I think I was 2 weeks into my job in funding before I was on a plane down to your corporate offices in Louisville, Kentucky, to be trained on how to work with your people. And for the last 11 years, everything that I've done working with consultants like yourself, that's all started with that training. And we've just kind of grown relationships from there. But you guys have a fantastic process. You take the time to understand, hey, who is your candidate? What are you looking to accomplish? Are you staying in a corporate America job? Are you exiting? Are you in transition? Is this something that you're building as a legacy player? Are you going to get your children involved? What kind of skill sets do you have? What are you interested in? You take all of this information in and you actually help people understand which of the 4,000 plus franchising opportunities there are in the United States, which of them might be the good or the best fit for them. So I really appreciate what you guys do to kind of prepare people to enter into our process, and then kind of continuing to be a sounding board for candidates that are evaluating multiple opportunities. You're there as a resource, and for us and for the candidate, that's invaluable.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. It's an honor. It's a blast. It's fun conversations to have. There's a lot of life change that happens between the conversations that we have and the conversations that we have with clients. And here's to 2025 and a whole lot more of that coming down the pipe in decades to come, man. So appreciate the conversation. Thanks for all you do with Milkshake Factory, and we'll talk soon.
Outstanding. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
See you, Storm.